If today you took away my over 600 plants and told me I need to start over again, I'd likely do things quite differently. First thing, there's a few things that I would absolutely ignore. There's some advice that I just wouldn't take, and there's at least one mistake that I wouldn't do from day one. So today, I want to look at starting over my collection, but knowing what I know now. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. So when most people make videos like this one, they tend to focus on what plants you should be buying. But in my humblest of opinions, I don't think that's probably the most important or interesting thing. I think it's about the mind shift change as to how you go about collecting or getting into the hobby rather than which specific plants. And let's get the first one out of the way super fast. I would not be chasing the perfect collection. You heard me right. It's not about having the perfect collection. It's a collection that works for you, because perfect could mean different things to a whole bunch of different peoples. So for example, I've got a plant behind me here, which a lot of people are probably going to be worried about in this video, going, why is the Traversia burkii drooping in this video? What's going on? The people that have been around for a while, they'll know. This plant, now in the heat that we're having in this country, and more specifically in this conservatory, the heat that I'm having, when there's heat waves on, this plant is getting it watered every 2 days. And I thought I'd film first before I do my watering. So today, guess what? Is watering day for this plant. I have actually just watered this plant before I started filming. Potentially as the video goes along, or even the second video you'll see this week, which will be filmed straight after this one, you might see this plant perk up. But you can see what I mean now. This in a perfect collection might be worrisome. It might be something that might stress people out. For me, I just know that it's watering day and it just needs a bit of water. It's showing me that it's a bit thirsty and it's a bit too hot, so it's going to flop down. That's completely normal. But more generally, when you start thinking about perfect collections, the simplest of things is that easy plants are not always easy. Take, for example, the humblest of golden pothos, or even the ZZ plant, the Zamioculcas zamiifolia. Now, for a lot of people, that is an easy plant. And that's the thing. When people give labels such as easy to a whole host of different plants, it just means on average, for most people, with most people's care, they will probably be on the easier side. It doesn't take into consideration if you're an overwaterer, if you're an underwaterer, if you have humidity, if you don't have humidity, where you're going to place it. Yes, it could be an easy plant if you do most things right, but that could be any plant. There's things like that. And I'll give you the example of the golden pothos more specifically, because I know some people have asked me this on videos, and this might surprise a few of you if you've not seen those comments. The overwhelming comment that I get from most people when I ever mention a golden pothos, especially the ones that are starting off, is why am I getting some random yellowing leaves that are happening on the stem? I've checked the roots, nothing's wrong. So this is what I mean. Easy is not always easy, and difficult isn't always difficult. It depends on you. It depends on your space, and it depends on how you're growing. So for me, what other people might find easy, I might find difficult, as has been proven several times on my channel, and vice versa. Other people might find certain plants difficult, I might find it easy. By and large, again, the people that have been here for a while, they'll know. For me, if something is labeled by a lot of people as difficult, watch me grow it well. If something is labeled by a lot of people as being super easy, watch me kill it super fast. So do what works for you. And the biggest thing that I could tell you is if you're restarting again, and if I was restarting again, I would just buy plants that excite me rather than these are the plants. And I have spoken about this. There are certain plants that I think you need to earn your stripes before you get to them. But even then, even by my own kind of quote unquote rule, pinch of salt. take that as you want to take it, basically, because it's one of those things that if something excites you, you're more than likely to do what you need to do to keep it happy. So I'll bring up the humble Anthurium clarinervium, which is for a lot of people something that they were very excited about. But this is one of the easier Anthuriums that a lot of people will gravitate towards. And I got into the hype when I first got my one. And if you've not been here long enough, that plant does not exist anymore. This is a new one that I'm testing again. With the slight difference in mindset, where I got that back then because everybody was getting it and everybody does, this is an easy Anthurium, but it didn't excite me. What I'm saying is, if you get a plant that excites you, even if it dies, you're A, more likely to enjoy it, and B, whatever you learn from the process of owning it is likely to stick in your head more than a plant where, as I said, I had this before, it didn't excite me. It does now, but it didn't excite me back then. When it ultimately perished, did I learn anything from it? Not really. Did I want to learn anything from it? Not really. Was I particularly bothered? Not really. It was just one more thing to look after that I really didn't have that much care for. And one of the big ones, and stay with me for this one, don't run away just yet, I would buy less plants. Shock? I know! And everybody just like, Memo, you're betraying the people that have still got large collections. No, hold on. Not saying that less plants or more plants is better or worse. It depends on your situation. But the difference with starting off and you've got nothing in your space, you can be a lot more selective, or I would be a lot more selective to just kind of go, okay, let's start with less plants. I might even dedicate a bit more to not trialing certain genuses that I know. Because again, remember, I'm doing this knowing what I know now. So for example, if I've struggled for the longest period of time growing anything that was, say, an air plant, guess what? Instead of having one or two stragglers of air plants in my space, which is what I've got now, I just wouldn't bother getting them at all. Or, for example, if I know that I can grow strappy leaf anthuriums until the cows come home, but maybe I struggle a bit with the velvety type anthuriums, guess what I won't be doing? I probably won't be getting the velvety type anthuriums at all, at least when I'm first starting off, and I would focus almost exclusively on the velvet type leaves. But that would be my personal preference with that, not just because I want to have a smaller collection, but it's a much more conscious, and there's a word that a lot of people are using these days, curated collection. So it's something that means something for you, and you can kind of get on board with everything that you need to do to keep those plants happy. And the biggest thing as well about this section before I move on is slowing down and having less, interestingly enough, at least in my humblest of opinions, teaches you more. And it teaches you much more specific things. So when you've got a lot less plants to care for, there is, and again, I'd love to hear from you chiming in the comments down below, especially all of us that have got the biggest collections. The learning process ends up becoming a bit faster. Not always better, but faster, because when you've got 20 plants that are struggling out of your 600 at the same time, yes, you're going to learn things because you're going to be adjusting everything for those 20 plants, but you can't really go into enough detail to just kind of go, okay, on the surface level, this is what I've learned. And that's the only thing you can really get into, the surface level, when you've got 20 things demanding your attention at the same time, versus if you've got the one, because you've got less overall, to just go, okay, on the surface level, it's this, but actually if I scratch a bit deeper, this is probably what caused it. You see, the knowledge that you potentially get by just having that second to breathe and not having other things because you've got so many plants to deal with can help you learn more in depth. Again, none of these things are absolutes, but these are the things that I've kind of learned over the years, and maybe they just apply to me, but that's how I would judge this. And the one that I think a lot of people were waiting for is I would design my space differently. And some of you might be shocked because there's a lot of people that watch my channel that just go, oh, I'd love your space, Memo, and I'd love to have a conservatory, and I want to get a house with a conservatory. Not saying that I'm influencing anybody to get a conservatory. There are a lot of downfalls. And it's interesting because I've mentioned this in the past as well. I've had people reach out to me when they've had conservatories or when they're moving the plant into greenhouses, and it's almost invariably after something horrible has happened, rather than at the point of purchasing it or planning it to kind of start getting things adjusted. Because keep in mind, my DMs on Instagram are open. That's probably the best place you can get me with some of these chunkier questions, especially if it comes to spaces like this. If you're thinking about growing your plants in a conservatory, if you're thinking about growing your plants in a greenhouse, I can at least offer some of my experiences so you don't have to go through some of the heartaches. But the questions that I usually get from people is, all my plants are fried because it either got too hot or they didn't have a shade cloth. That's just one very specific example, but there are several things that you learn from growing in this space, which is very different. Yes, there is a lot of benefits versus growing in a house, because imagine this as a massive grow tent or a massive IKEA glass cabinet, one that you can walk into. That is the draw for a lot of people, because I walk into this space, anybody that walks into the space, and it's just like, I feel like I'm in a jungle. Look at all of these plants around and all of these things. But as you might notice, as I'm pointing around, the realities of having fans everywhere. I've got a dehumidifier down here, not a humidifier, because it gets super humid in here. It's things like that. So what would I do specifically with this space? Because if I had no plants, but I still had this space, and this is a space that I would be filling in, and looks weren't as important to me, I would do a few things. If I had all the money in the world, I would put blinds on every single glass surface in this room. And if I had all the money in the world, I'd even make them kind of be smart devices so they can open and close, and I can set up certain things to know that, you know what, if the weather's like this and the light is like this, close these blinds automatically, or if it's low light, then open them up to let a lot more in. Things like that. I would, for example, not have just the one radiator in here. The way that the kind of heating system works in the UK is that everything feeds off the one central heating system, and it feeds every single radiator, which means that invariably this radiator is not on all of the time in the UK, because all the other radiators in the house would be on all of the time and I would roast. So it is one of those things, so I would potentially have its own dedicated heating source. These are the things that I'm saying, that if I had all the money on the world and I knew what I knew now, what would I do before even starting? What changes would I make to the space? I would get a dehumidifier almost immediately. I also wouldn't mess around and get cheaper ones and slowly get more expensive ones and slowly get more expensive ones. I know a lot more things now. I would go for the one that I have now, which again is a smart device. It switches on and off at its own intervals. It will adjust humidity throughout the day. It works perfectly for my space. I'm sure that if you, in your situation, you need a humidifier running for a long time, there would be the equivalent versions of humidifiers. And if anybody wants a dehumidifier, the specific one that I've got, and that question might come up, I'll link it down below. I'm going to warn you, it's not cheap, but I've been doing this for too long to be messing around it anymore. So it's things like this that would make this space entirely different. Would I keep the floor? Yes, because the kind of laminate looking vinyl flooring has been glorious in here, even when essentially it's so humid, and it's over 90% humidity with my old conservatory, and it was literally raining from condensation in this space, and this was almost always entirely wet. Not a single problem. Somebody reminded me the other day, actually, when they removed the old conservatory and put this one on, the entire floor in the middle of the winter, and it was raining and it was doing all these things, was fully exposed to the elements, the cold and the rain, constant rain, for 4 days before they put everything on. The floor, immaculate. So there's certain things like this, some things I would keep doing and certain things that I would change. But the space, and making sure that the space is ready for whatever collection or whatever plants are coming into it, is for me one of the largest bits of the battle. Because if I had everything set up the way, and don't get me wrong, things will evolve, things will change. When I have that new collection, things might be different and I might want things differently, but at least going into it, utilizing some of the knowledge that I already have would be absolutely immense. Watch me do exactly that when I finally buy the next property and move into it, and kind of put that into practice. And I've done that. I've moved 3 properties with a massive collection, and every time I move to a different property, granted there's a different set of rules because the location that the plants are in might change, but I have learned things over the way, over the years, and some people have been like, I don't like that you've got this here. You might not like that I've got it there, but there is a very good reason why it is there, and I do not regret a lot of the decisions that I've made in this space, especially the ones that I've bought in from previous knowledge, and neither should you. And I'll circle back to the easy plant scenario. And again, a little tip, just because they've been classed as easy by the wider market doesn't mean that they're going to be easy for you. So adjust what that ease is based on your needs, especially if you're restarting and you know what you know now. So if you had to restart everything from scratch, there are a few people that are doing this. People that have moved away from plants, maybe kept a couple and are coming back into plants. Is quite interesting to see a lot of people that were just going, oh, the rare plants that were rare before and super expensive that I would have never bought into, and I kind of came off the hobby for a bit, and now I'm kind of back into it because a lot of the plants that I would have wanted back then are a lot more available, they're a lot cheaper, all of these things. So just because it's easy means it's easy for the individual saying that, especially if they're saying this is an easy plant based on my experience. Is their experience the same as yours? Because let me paint a picture, okay? So people ask me again about this plant a lot of the times, or even the Queen Anthurium, or even the Dark Lord that's behind it. Like, do you find it easy? I'm just like, yes, I might find them easy in my space. And actually, ironically enough, the Traversia is one of the more challenging plants in my space. But just because I find it easy, and remember what I was talking about before about my space, within this space where there's high levels of humidity, the heat gets super, super hot in here in the summer. Actually, a little side thing that I forgot to put on the other one about redoing my space properly, I would have not just windows in this space, I would have a place. And if you're doing this on a greenhouse, you can do this where there's windows that automatically open towards the top to relieve some of the heat, or even exhaust fans that will drag out some of the heat that sits at the very top of the conservatory, because obviously we know that heat rises, things like that. But this is a more challenging plant in my space. Now, I could tell somebody that this is difficult, but they can be like, well, Memo, you're talking rubbish because I've grown this in my space, which is different from your conservatory. They won't say that little bit, but it's different from your conservatory and it's completely fine. I don't understand why you're finding it's difficult. It's difficult with the care that I'm giving it in my space. Conversely, for instance, the Philodendron Sharonii behind me, this is super easy for me. But I can't do a sweeping generalization and say, okay, for everybody, this plant here specifically is going to be the easiest plant you can grow. Because I don't know how you're growing your plants. I don't know what your schedule is. I don't know what your watering is like. I also don't know if you've got a space with this much light, or this much humidity, or this much heat in the summer, or this much cold in the winter, because that's the other thing that people forget. Sometimes the plants that they're seeing here are just like, how are you growing that really easily in your space? Because it's a plant from a higher elevation. And I'm just like, yeah, because guess what? The space also gets really cold in the winter. Not cold enough to kill off plants, but cold enough that it's enough of a drop that the plants from the higher elevations, for instance, the Dracula orchids, are super, super happy. Don't get me wrong, there is a flip side of that, because those plants will be super, super miserable in the summer in this space because it gets too hot. But again, you can move things around. So easy is a generalization that people will put on, and think of it as an average rather than the rule. So I wouldn't fall into that kind of notion of, yeah, this is easy, so I'll go for that. Another one is I would buy 1 or 2 rare plants early on in the journey. So the variegated banana, and there's a new leaf coming. I know for the people that are wanting, so I keep showing you stuff that people want to see. Some of the leaves got like a bit bent recently, so they're fine. They're looking a bit yellow, but it's because they've bent at the petiole. Now, this is a plant that I was super fearful for years. I've been wanting to grow this, and I knew how expensive it was, and I didn't want to grow it. And a lot of people, when I bought this and I said I was worried, they're just like, why? It's still a banana. They grow like a weed. Completely true. But the thing that I've learned now is that starting off with 1 or 2 rare plants or slightly more expensive plants would be where I would go. And I think some of you might be surprised and just going, oh, everybody else says start off with the easy stuff. No, watch me like kind of break the rule that everybody else puts in. I'd say go for it. Go for 1 or 2. I'm not saying buy all of the rare plants or all of the expensive plants. Buy 1 or 2, because invariably what you will then do is hyperfixate on that plant because of the price, or because it's so desirable, it's because something you really desperately want, which would mean you're gonna learn, super fast. They will probably humble you. That's fine. But remember what I said earlier on, you're more likely to learn from them. But that's what I'm saying. Only one or two. Don't get everything because that starts falling into crazy category. But one or two in the beginning would be really good because then you can learn super, super fast because you're more keen on it versus you not being massively interested. So I can get a really simple plant and just go, I'm not that fussed about it. See the Anthurium clarinervium that I was talking about before, and it dies off. Did you learn something? Yeah, kind of. Is it going to stick? Probably not. The other big thing is I would experiment a lot sooner. And I know we experiment from the very beginning, but I would go heavily into experimentation. So glass cabinets, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, different propagation methods, lighting, shelving heights, shelving types, all of these things, I would experiment a lot faster because, and I'll give you an example of an old video that I did a while back where like the people that remember the tinfoil hats that we were talking about before. Remember I tried some of these tests and experiments. Some of them worked better than others. Some of these hacks worked better than others. Guess what I've still got down there in my space, and hopefully it might be coming up on the camera. I've got a much wider angle lens and you can see more of my space now, but there is tin foil still there on the back of a wall, which is one of my darkest shelves. I've got a grow light, but that tin foil is helping to reflect back on the light. I would have never have learned this, and I'm still kicking myself for something as simplistic as that. Took me years into my planty journey before I had the nerve to just go, oh, let's experiment. That might be a bit weird, but let's experiment. What have I got to lose? I would start experimenting and doing fun things and trialing different things much earlier on in my life, or in at least the journey that I would have with plants, and see how they got on. And a little tip, just between you and me, would be don't just do it on a pothos. Because you know why I'm saying this. Because whenever we all experiment, that poor damn pothos plant is the thing that gets smacked down every time. And it's just kind of, I'm going to run an experiment. What plant is super easy? Let's take a cutting from a pothos here and a cutting from a pothos here. Because actually the experiments that I did with other types of plants, intentionally or unintentionally, have taught me more. Yes, the pothos, the humblest of pothos is really good for experiments, but actually sometimes the other ones, and it's just like, oh, I've tried this on a particularly difficult plant and it worked. Doesn't necessarily mean it would have worked on the pothos as well, but I then found a breakthrough in terms of care for a specifically difficult plant because I tested specifically on it. So yeah, experiment, experiment, experiment as early as I possibly could. And the biggest thing I would change is not telling kind of the memo in this version of, you know what, buy this plant, don't buy this plant. It would be more of a case of take it easy on yourself, and super importantly, for me, again, I know this is not going to apply for everybody, as people have said in my comments several times, you don't have to grow everything perfectly. One more time, you don't have to grow everything perfectly. Crispy edges, flopping leaves because the watering happened like a couple of hours later than it should have happened. It's fine. Because, and I think I'm going to keep saying this until I'm blue in the face, just to help give everybody that moment of relief, even the people that want to keep their plants perfect. And they might get frustrated, there might be some challenges along the way, and I understand it. But try to go easy on yourselves. I would hope that I would go easy on myself, because striving for that perfection, which ironically enough, and I think this is the thing that most people forget, for most people, your plant will never look as perfect as the day that you bought it. One more time, your plant will probably never look as perfect than as the day you bought it. For a lot of people. I know there's going to be exceptions to the rule, and I'm sure they're all going to tell me in the comments down below. But what you need to remember with this is the plant that you're buying from a plant store has literally just come from the grower in the most ideal conditions. And hopefully I've got some B-roll that I can put on here from when I visited a tropical plant grower, and you can see rows of essentially what is monoculture. So it's a lot easier to have entirely perfect conditions for this specific philodendron because almost that entire greenhouse is dedicated to just growing 5,000 of that exact philodendron. Guess what you're going to do at that point? That exact philodendron's specific environment can be replicated perfectly. Guess what you can't do when you've got multiple plants? I'm not even talking about 600 plants. I'm talking about 20 plants that are taking up the same space, 5 plants that are taking up the same space that don't have the same care needs. It's highly unlikely that you're going to be able to go, okay, all 5 of these plants have got different conditions, different things that they need in order to be perfect, and I'm going to keep all of them perfect at the same time. You can't. Like there's only so many plates and spinning things that you can juggle at the one time. This one might need 65% humidity. This one might want 100% humidity. This one might want a cool winter. This one might want a hot winter. Do you see how it then becomes exponentially more difficult? Then you end up with plants that might have crispy tips, might have some yellowing leaves. I'm not talking about plants that are sick. I'm talking about plants that don't look as perfect as when you got them from the grower. Also, I encourage every single one of you, when you're buying plants from growers, when you're buying plants from big box stores, when you're buying plants from anywhere, have a look, because we're really good at looking at the roots, which is good. We should be checking the roots when you get something like this and checking for pests and all these things. Check to see for cuts. Might not always find them, but it's very telling if you buy a specific plant, especially if you've never grown it before, check to see for cuts on the plant. Has the grower at some point chopped the growing stem? Have they taken off petioles? Have they taken off leaves? Have those leaves dropped off? That tells you multiple things. It means that that plant has been super tailored to look perfect to you when you're buying it. So unless you're going to be doing the same things, yours will never look as perfect, because guess what? You're not manicuring the plant all the time. Second thing that's good to know there, and I'm hoping that this is something that's clicked for a lot of people, if there's a lot of things that have happened on that plant, it might tell you that you might have lucked out, and depending on how large the plant is, and you've got a mother plant. And the reason why there's so many cuts on such an established plant is because they took cuttings and then made other baby plants to then sell on, which is great because you've got the mother stock. That could also be problematic. But if you've got a standard size plant or a slightly smaller plant and there's been loads of cuts on there, question it. Not necessarily at the seller's stage, but when you're looking at the plant, hopefully before you've bought it, or even after you've bought it, why? Is this plant even difficult for the growers? So they've had to manicure it because even they couldn't grow it perfectly. What chance have you got to grow it absolutely perfectly? It's just this whole bit that I'm talking about here is to give you all a bit of breathing space. Even the ones that love the perfect plants and they thrive to get that. Be kind to yourselves, because there's a lot of things that are happening that you might or might not be able to do, because guess what? We're all human beings with busy lives. We don't just grow plants for a living, if that makes sense. Some people might do, but for a lot of people, this is the hobby. So expecting that level of perfection is probably not great for your mental health. Sometimes things can look a bit crispy. Things can look a bit busted. Which one of us is perfect as well? We've all got our flaws, we've all got our little things. It's fine. As long as the plant is healthy and happy, it can have a crispy tip, it can have an old yellowing leaf, it can have all of these things. It's fine. Again, as long as there's no pest damage, as long as there's no issues with the plants, like with the roots, with anything like that, it's fine. Consider it part of its personality and just kind of go, well, you know. It's the same thing. I had like, one of the chickens that I've got at the allotment. In the beginning, she's all fine now, but she was really not coping well with the heat. She was a big fluffy Brahma. I've dealt with all that. She doesn't have an issue, but there was a point where she was almost like fainting from the heat, and then come back and everything I was trying to read, and I was just like, okay, there's nothing more serious going on. I've sorted it all now, but it just like sometimes you get certain animals like this, or even like if you've got a dog or a cat, and this is heartbreaking for a lot of people because I know it's quite disconcerting for the owners, and they might have something like epilepsy. Do you love your pet any less because it's got epilepsy? Or does your love shift slightly at that point and go, I still love you as much as I did before, if not more, with just a slight kookiness now, is that sometimes as long as you're managing it and as long as it's not causing harm to the health of the animal or to the health of the plant, It's just the kooky way that this being, whether it's a pet or a plant, is, and it's fine. It just changes how you view the plant or the pet. Sorry, I'm getting very deep here. I'll stop wrapping up. I promise. I promise. But yes, on that note, let's wrap it up. Basically, tell me. You don't have to say if you agree or not. You can if you want to. My comments are not policed in any way or form. But maybe if you want to, I'm very curious. This is a topic that I'd be really interested to see what you will kind of chime in on. One or two things that, say, without the heartache of somebody just removing your entire collection from you, and you know exactly what you have learned over the weeks, months, years of owning plants, what one or two things would you do differently, or would you still do? It'd be really interesting to see how people would change or not, and kind of what they would keep or not. But yes, hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly, truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.